Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles, a great millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And shout out the Akims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, already in week 3 of World War III, whether they actually call this off in a couple of weeks, because there's rumors going around that they might call this off, that Trump's bit off of more than he could chew, that he actually called Putin, and then of course they didn't agree upon anything, because part of the plan was, of course, that the enriched uranium would go to Russia, similar to when Bashar al-Assad and Russia had agreed that Bashar al-Assad would get rid of the sarin gas weapons, that they tried to claim was banned weapons, etc. And under the agreement, to end the war in Syria. Well, you already know what happened. These terrorist groups still came in because under the guise of fighting ISIS, the U.S. was able to stay there, right? But, that the U.S. would not attack Syria, even though they did back in 2017. When Donald Trump was first president, he ordered an attack on Syria as well, because of the white helmets staging a false flag chemical attack. But nonetheless, though, that was part of the deal, is that, they would send the enriched uranium to Russia, what they claim, as part of the deal. And of course, that reparations must be paid back to Iran for everything that's destroyed, because of course, Russia, is trying to ensure the safety of Iran at the same time. Donald Trump didn't want to take the deal, so the war is still on. But nonetheless, though, he's still trying to find out how to get out of it, because this is costing a lot more. And these people that still blindly support him are just, it's like, okay, well, we voted him in because he said that he was a peace president, that he wanted to end the wars, right? But yet he's bombed 10 countries since he's been in office. So this is not the peace president they thought that they had voted for. That in fact he took over Venezuela, and now talking, threatening to go ahead and take over Cuba, with a friendly transfer, saying that they want to make a deal, is raise tariffs against all the allies. And in fact, the U.S. and Israeli state have resulted in bombing and destroying civilian infrastructure and firing on civilians, but saying Iran had did it, that is taking weapons and making them look like they were Iranian weapons. And they're planning to stage a false flag. There was rumor last week that there was going to be a false flag drone attack against the coast of California, and that they would say Iran did it, So they're planning something, a 9/11 style. Russian intelligence knows about it. So does Iranian intelligence, right? Because Russia shares their intelligence with Iran. So like everything else, so they're looking for some sort of false flag events to blame Iran. Now they've done little shit like synagogue, stabbings or some other type of shootings, trying to say that, this person was a sleeper cell. They're trying to hype that up, but it's not working, because the narrative is gone. Trump is blowing up and saying, that he doesn't want these reporters reporting on the Iran war, right? Because it's not going so good for them. They claim to have destroyed Iran's navy. They claim to have destroyed their air force. Well, Russia has already countered that. In fact, Tu-160s have been deployed to Iran, for their air force. So Russia is already sending Tu-160s there, which are hypersonic jets. And these are some of the best in the world. So Iran's air force, even if a good portion of them had been taken out, and don't forget, 90% of the missiles, right, that their missile launching capabilities are 90% crippled, according to Donald Trump. And that's going well, and that this war could be over very soon. And yet has deployed 100,000 troops. He's not telling you publicly that he deployed 100,000 troops, but nonetheless, though, he is, however, publicly stating that he sent 2,500 Marines into Bahrain. The U.S. Marines sent over there. And then you also have at least 9 refueling planes that have been shot down from Iran, even though they'll never admit that Iran did. They'll just say that, they had some problems, and they definitely say that 9 members were killed, with the fueling plane that was downed in Iraq. They'll never say that it was because Iran had shut it down. No, this was because of mechanical failure. But how do you explain 9 other ones? you know. See, their lies are just getting more and more thick, and it's becoming more and more blatantly obvious that they are losing the war. Iran is not even close to giving up. In fact, what has happened is that they want revenge. They want to avenge their leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And in fact, the son, who, how the father becomes the son, his predecessor, wants the same thing. And his sentiments are the same, as that they're going to punish the U.S. and Israeli state to where they can never do this again. And you're now seeing that indeed they are using bigger missiles now, and they're taking out a lot. You're not getting a lot of coverage as to how bad it was. They did kill King Bibi's brother, and they did kill Kotz, but it's looking like King Bibi isn't dead, although you've been seeing a lot of rumors. You've heard about the 6 fingers of King Bibi, but it's turned out to be a farce that, King Bibi's still alive, but he's hiding like the chicken shit coward that he always has been, right? He ain't going to, stand with his people. Most of his people can't even fucking stand him. He's wanted by his own government because of some other things. A lot of them don't want this war. Those Israelis over there really didn't want this war to begin with, but he started a war. And now they are feeling what it's like to be like Gaza. They didn't really do too much to stand against the war in Gaza. Although you did see some demonstrators in Tel Aviv and other places speaking against it, but not like they should have, right? But now it's all coming home to roost, right? Pretty much so. A lot of people are trying, and there's panic at the airports trying to leave the Israeli state, right? So a lot going on that you're not being told about, unless you watch the alternative media, and that's just it. Eventually, they're going to get rid of the alternative media. Eventually, they're going to take down our channels, too. You see, because they're going to falsely accuse us of, they're going to pull off some event to where they can say that, okay, it's, black Hebrew Israelites, because they have the Rex 84 program. And then you know about them other programs, right, to blame us like they did with 9/11, But you see, a lot of people are opposed to this war. There's a lot more people opposed to this war. And even Tucker Carlson has now went out on record to say that they are plotting to kill him and plotting to bring him up in charges, because of they're going to say that he was a spy. They're trying to come up with some charges against Tucker Carlson. He already made that statement public, because Tucker Carlson has been very critical of this war as well. There's a lot of those that have been critical of the war, and they really have lost their narrative. So it's just a matter of time that they're going to be shutting this down, And like everything else, so they're going to falsely accuse the brothers, right? They're already talking about martial law, possibly in April, like Jane Helms style. They're talking about that too. See, a lot of things are going on right now, all at the same time. But you are starting to see uproars of the people. On the first weekend of bombing, there was 50,000 in London, or at least the first week. There was 50,000 in London protesting this war. And you already know what they've done with the information over there. You're not allowed to look at certain things. You're not allowed to say certain things over the internet there. They could arrest you for what you look at. So that eventually is going to come over here too. You see, we're not going to be on YouTube forever. We're not going to be on BitChute or Odysee or Rumble forever. Eventually they're going to shut it all down like they've done with TikTok. You can only get what's allowed to be shown on TikTok. And they're purposely keeping the paths open just so that way they can shut it down, because you know as well as I do that Facebook Beta is a spy. So they are, recording your every movement. And they have trackers. And Apostle Tahar already went on record of saying that expect everybody in the military to be chipped. Well, they were already putting tracking chips into people in Operation Iraqi Freedom. There's quite a few people that were chipped there for certain missions. There was mostly special forces, but they were chipped. And no, you cannot remove these chips once they're in you. These special top teams were in there. Well, everybody who they get, and don't forget the draft, is going to be chipped. See, they're going to mandate this thing worldwide, and they're already... Yeah, as you know, Strait of Hormuz is officially closed, except for those that are conducting business outside the U.S. and Israeli state. If you're partnered with the U.S. and Israeli state, you cannot pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And this so-called protection that they were offered, and Trump is really losing it over this, Well, they're declining that because of the fact that, you know, the U.S. can't even protect the Lincoln strike group, and they can't even protect the Ford strike group. You know, that if they come too close within range of Iran, they will be targeted. And then they claim to have destroyed Iran's navy, which, you know, that's neither here nor there. Because you got a lot of propaganda on both sides of it, more so on the U.S. side. You know, the IRGC is very careful as to what they allow to be public, but also their leader, the president, actually was out there on the streets celebrating with them on Quads Day. You could actually see President Pishkan or Agashi. You could see him actually out on the streets with them, you know, commemorating Quads Day, you know, which is, you know, right there, you know. So he's not hiding in a bunker somewhere. You know, he actually was out there, you know. Now, like everything else, though, when there are missile attacks, of course, you know, you do have to seek shelter. But at the same time, though, you know, they've shown themselves to be more courageous in facing an enemy. You know, you got the U.S. and Israeli state bombing the shit out of them, and you got all these other countries hosting U.S. terrorist bases, right? And you got Trump, you know, threatening them if they don't join the fight, you know, that they won't have the protection. It's like, well, you're not even protecting your own. You know, you're letting those bases fall. You're not putting up much of a defense at all. In fact, you're getting slaughtered out there, and you're not even truthful about the numbers here. You know, over 1,500 have already been killed. You know, U.S. servicemen, etc., have been killed already in this, but they're not going to tell you that. The Pentagon's only really released less than 100. You know, official. You know, because they're never going to tell you the truth. They're going to lie to you and say that they're winning the war. Well, does it not remind you of Vietnam? You can see that people started turning against LBJ during Vietnam because of the fact that he kept on lying and say that the war was going great when it wasn't. And then, of course, the rumors going around that there's an impending ground invasion is all happening at the same time. That they are planning to use ground troops to invade, but yet at the same time, they're even losing in Iraq. In Iraq, the Iraqi resistance forces, which is not even the Iraqi government, is already, they've come under fire from Iraqi resistance groups there, you know, because a lot of them are, in fact, you know, on the side of Iran. And of course, Hezbollah is the other one, right? But then you got the Syrian interim government actually attacking Hezbollah positions, you know, and totally on the side of the Israeli state. Well, that's not surprising, you know. And then you got the prophecy of Damascus to come up too. You know, how that falls out, you know, still though seems to be the beginning of the nuclear war, which I've stated on numerous occasions that it's looking like that's the beginning of the nuclear war when Damascus ceases from being a city, becoming a ruinous heap. And yet I've also seen that indeed what could cause it to be taken out is they used it as a launch pad against Iran. Well, what if Syria's interim government, you know, the puppet government under al-Jilani actually attacks from there? That could cause it, you know. And then, of course, Russia's also to be sending troops into the bases into Syria, you know, to fortify positions there. So you got a lot of ground troop movements. So it's looking like there will be a ground invasion. And yet Ezekiel 38 goes into this, right? That all these places would have ground troops, would have a ground offensive in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. You know, that Putin, a.k.a. Gog, and he would be a guard and a lookout for them, right? But he would also have his troops there. There would be troops there to, you know, to mostly defend Iran. But the Most High is the one that's doing all this, is gathering all the armies of the world into that valley. So, you know, we go over Ezekiel 38 quite a lot because you're seeing the formation already, you know, and they've already stated that they're going to be sending troops into Syria, which is the heart of the Valley of Jehoshaphat right there. Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 4, and I will turn you around and put hooks into thy jaws and bring thee forth all thine army forces, horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, a great company of bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. You know, this is talking about ground troops. This is talking about even bigger swords, missile defense systems, S-400s, etc. You could say Air Force. You could say a lot of things. And these would be the places, right? Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. So all of them are going to be fighting. Yes, the Libyans are going to be involved in this war too, and they're going to be, most of them are going to be on the side of Russia. Gomer and all its troops, talking about Turkey, the House of Tagama, the North Quarters, and all his troops, and many people with thee. So there's going to be troops coming in from all these areas to go after the U.S. and Israelis. Be thou prepared, prepare thyself, all that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So like everything else, what's going to happen? Eventually they're going to go into Tel Aviv. Eventually they're going to get rid of these Zionists once and for all. Be thou prepared, and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be a guard unto them. Meaning be a lookout, protect them. After many days you shall be visited in the latter years, and it shall come into the land that is brought back from the sword. Thus, talking about the Israeli state. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee, because they're going to go after the Israelis. They're going to go out with those that started this war. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, it shall come to pass that at the same time things shall come into thy mind, thou shalt think an evil thought. It's like, okay, let's go after them. Let's finish this. Oh, and by the way, King Bibi does have a price on his head still. Iran has officially put a price on his head, because this has been an eye for an eye. They took out Ayatollah Khomeini, that was already done, so therefore they do want avenged, and they want it to the point that they can never be attacked again. The only way to do that is to take out the superpower, great Satan and little Satan. And this is it. This is what we're reading. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, dwelling without walls, having neither bars nor gates, And that is to take them down, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. So that's talking about the U.S. and Israeli assets. They're in that valley. So you see, like everything else, everybody's going to be fighting in that war. And they have to usher in something else in the midst of this war, right? Well, economically, the petrodollar is dead. The Strait of Hormuz closed. Well, you can only sustain business for so long. And don't forget, it ain't just oil, it's fertilizers, which is essential for all farmers to have. You see, the U.S., even though it has its own resources and all that, is so stretched out that its blood vessels are very thin. You know how it is when you stretch out your blood vessels. It totally relies on imports. It ain't enough to dig into its own resources and all that to sustain. It can't sustain for everything it has. You see, its blood vessels are all spread out. So they totally are reliant upon the Strait of Hormuz, and that's closed. So Trump is going more and more ballistic because none of these countries want to help, and none of them really want to take a risk and bring their ships in there to be attacked by Iran. You see, because anybody doing business with Iran is legitimate targets. I mean, helping the U.S. to conduct strikes against Iran are legitimate targets. But it has been the U.S. and Israeli state to draw these other states into war by shooting at civilian infrastructure to say that Iran did it. And they hadn't stopped there. You got other false flags impending. And we do believe that they'll try to bring in a false flag. Now, a lot of people are going to call bullshit because unlike 9/11, at least during that time, though, they didn't have the alternative media like they do now. You didn't have people calling out bullshit, although it was starting. A lot of people were becoming more aware. It was like, wait a minute, these stories just don't add up. Why did building number 7 come down? And you would find out later that there were so many inconsistent things about this, but you didn't have it to the degree you do now, where you have videos circulating showing all the 9/11 inside job and the dancing Israelis, celebrating because they finally pulled off the false flag. Now you do. Now, pretty much anything they do has been foiled. Now, we definitely believe that this so-called coastal attack that was supposed to happen on California was deliberately leaked. It was deliberately saying that the FBI revealed, and that ABC was supposed to run the story. We believe that was all deliberate, just so that way, they can play around with it. See, like everything else, problem, reaction, solution, right? Oh, well, that's not true. We haven't heard anything in there. You heard them say at the Pentagon that we didn't hear any such stories, so that way it sounds like false reporting, right? What they deliberately leaked that story. It's all done on purpose. It's all a mind fuck, a psyop, if you will, which is the easier way of saying mind fuck, right? These people are already all fucked in the head anyways, man. They don't even know which way to turn. You can't believe anything anymore because everybody's a liar. This is a house of thieves. This is the house of the thief, and it's been the hammer of the whole earth. But this idea that they're liberating other countries has been a farce for a long time, and people realize that it's just nothing but endless wars, and they're not in the interests of the U.S., but rather in the interests of the Israelis. And they don't want to fight for the Israeli state. You're seeing the resistance build up, everywhere, In all these countries, man, they're all saying the same thing, that they don't want to fight for the Israelis, that it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with the Israelis. And they don't want to fight this war, right? So they have to do something, to get them to want to fight. They have to be able to pull off a false flag, And they also have to cause civil unrest. Well, this war definitely is going to cause a lot of that, but it's going to eventually come to the point that they're going to have martial law. And that's what 2 Ezra chapter 15 is going into. As World War III, we're in the third week already. We entered into the third week. The second week has already passed. Now we're in the third week. And a lot of people are calling it World War III, not just us, but a lot of them already say, hey, man, once they attack Iran, how long has Apostle Tahar been telling you that? Once they start attacking Iran, that's just about it. It's a done deal. Well, it's official, World War III. 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Which is talking about the Third World War. For the sword and the destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands. Meaning that they're all going to take up arms. They're all going to be against each other. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, which shall not regard their kings nor princes. And of course their actions shall stand in their power. Meaning that you're either with Trump or you're against Trump. You see that a lot. You can't get away from these fucking MAGA douchebags, right? Because that's all they do is worship Trump, no matter what he does. He can never fuck up. He's the savior. That's the way people treat him, and he hasn't done any good at all. Fuck, there's still a fucking shutdown, by the way. The government is still shut down. There's a partial government shutdown going on. DHS ain't been paid, and neither has TSA, because that's all part of the DHS. They still ain't getting funding because there's been a shutdown. That was already happening prior to World War III. So, pretty much so, you see how they have a split between the right and the left, what do you call them, the conservatives versus the liberals. You have this divide, Democrats, Republicans. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, It's going to be so bad out there that it's going to be unsafe to actually step outside your home unless you want to take the risk in getting killed. Because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, and houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. It ain't even going to be safe to hide in your own house. That's how bad it's going to get. People are going to invade your house. Man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but destroy their houses with a sword, and spoil their goods because of lack of bread and for great tribulation. Especially once they shut this whole thing down. Once they tell you that the dollar's dead, their assets are frozen because how else are they going to usher in the mark of the beast, the MOTB? They're going to shut down everybody's account. Anybody who has money in the banks is about to lose. Anybody that's invested in the 401k, you can kiss that goodbye. It's all going to be changed. It's going to turn into a new digital system, and you already know the infrastructure is there. And like everything else, though, then there's also going to be more division for those that don't want to fight this war. People being turned away from the lottery, right? And being pulled away from their homes because, they didn't have a choice whether they signed up. Yeah, it's all digitally signed up. They're digitally signed up for selective service, so they're going to take them. And take all their children, man. People are going to lose their kids, man, and they're going to fucking go ballistic, right? Hey, things are going to be turned up very soon. It'd be very surprising if we do go into 2027. But this is the year of apostasy and great sellouts, right? So like everything else, though, the other camps, what are they doing, man? You know, those outside Great Millstone and all that, are they warning about the unrest to come? Are they warning their people that things are about to get bad? Are they warning about the MOTB like we do? You see, they're not. They're not doing anything like that, you know? And, you know, we have the 100% truth, and we've been out here diligently. So things are going to continue to be shaken up as, you know, there's an impending ground invasion, and the MOTB is imminent. We keep on saying that like a broken record, but it's imminent. Amongst the chaos, amongst the shutdown, amongst the shortages, they're going to usher in the new system. It's all happening as we speak. So many events happening at the same time. So hopefully all this has been edifying. For that I want to say Baraka the Yahweh, Baraka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Kakadash, Wal Abab Abal. Baraka Thumb to Yehovah elect. Shalom.